Well, welcome everybody. Today we have a session which is called Really Freaking Indispensable in Decisive Advertising. So the session is not just about bananas, as you can tell, but it's also about really about transformation. It's really about connecting digital experiences and experiences that we have in the real world and see how that can actually change the experience for advertisers. And ultimately, we'll have an opportunity to have a real-life demo from Joel and Richard here on stage with me. So, and he'll have a chance to kind of see exactly how IoT can change the world of advertising and ultimately deliver kind of the promised land of advertising, which is delivering the right message at the right time to the right customers. So it seems to be like it's a relatively simple thing to do, but in reality it's extremely complex business as well as technological task. So it turns out that once we start moving into the direction of mobile advertising, location and the signal that you can actually obtain from mobile devices can determine not only the identities of the customers, but also the message, the right message you need to send and the right time, which ultimately can result in significant improvement in your advertising campaigns. Because ultimately what you want to do is you want to catch that user in the micro moment when the decision is about to be made, right? And being able to understand exactly the context of that user experience as well as the location of that user will help you to improve your advertising campaigns significantly. So it's a very common effect that we can see across multiple industry studies that advertising signal is significantly improved by location data. And in the recent study by a marketer, 66% of marketers use location data in the advertising campaigns. So when we think about digital advertising, first things that we think about definitely mobile, right? Because a lot of devices right now, people spend a lot of time on mobile devices. That's basically where they live. And it can be through web or through mobile. But ultimately, it's a lot more than that. Than just mobile advertising. So if you think about mobile advertising, that's where users live, right? And then the users experience mobile devices and mobile applications. Ultimately, they use these mobile devices as a gateway or as a connection point into the rest of the real world. So many people probably here experimented with Alexa. It's a great example when you have a physical device, and that physical device also has a mobile app, right? So you can actually experience the physical device, and you also can experience the connection to that physical device through a mobile app. So ultimately, you have a situation where your mobile advertising and your kind of mobile experience not only kind of pulls the entire digital advertising cart, but it also pushes a completely new trend that we can see. And many people have not really thought about it, but that's exactly what we see right now, is that you have tremendous number of different devices, right? These devices, they live everywhere, and these devices can connect to you through your mobile applications. So ability to connect those worlds, where you have a real world with all your devices, and you have a digital world with all your mobile applications. All these connections is done through your mobile phone. And the next thing, which is also quite fascinating that's happening recently, is if you think about a digital journey, right? A journey of a person throughout the day of life, right? You move around, you get up, you go to work, you drive your car, you do all these activities. And in reality, a lot of these activities will start generate data. And they will start generate data based on your proximity to a variety of different sensors. So whether you like it or not, your journey throughout the day in your physical world will result in a kind of virtual experience and a journey through a digital world. A variety of different IoT devices can come into your life, in some cases even without you knowing, but basically measure your experiences, where you are, who you are, right? And all this data can actually be collected and used for the purposes of advertising. So ultimately, IoT is becoming kind of the world of data collection, and this data is extremely interesting and extremely highly valuable. Historically, when people interact with digital advertising, they navigate through the app, or maybe they click on something on a mobile or desktop. So in reality, it's like IoT data is much richer in nature. In addition to that, IoT data can be collected anywhere and in the physical proximity to the user, which gives you a lot more additional contextual information. It's not just location, but it's also the user intention. So the devices can send all this data, and in many cases this data can be collected, filtered, and acted upon. And in many cases the device itself can actually run a piece of software that can actually make a decision. For example, a recommendation decision. So these IoT devices can actually run, let's say, a deep neural net network, for example, MXNet. And there could be recommendations engines that can be running in your local IoT device. So ultimately, you have a situation where all these IoT devices, they can collect tremendous amounts of data. This data can be used for advertising purposes. And the value of this data is time sensitive, right? So the same decision that you can make now versus the same decision that you can make 30 seconds later may result in completely different customer experience. That's why timeliness of this data is so super important. So here's a little diagram that kind of gives you an overview of how IoT works. So how many people here are familiar with IoT, AWS IoT? So quite a few. But basically on the left side, we have a number of devices that collecting data. Right? They may run Greengrass, or they may run some other kind of data generation infrastructure. And they ultimately connect to a set of MQTT topics inside AWS IoT service. So these MQTT topics are basically kind of connection points that eventually will receive the data and send this data forward into Iot Rules. So think of Iot Rules as a set of business logic, like let's say SQL queries, that will be filtering this MQTT data and then taking action. For example, if something happened inside my IoT device, I would like to receive this message, filter this message, and basically take an action based on that message. For example, that action can be a Lambda invocation. Like in this example, you can have a Lambda invocation, take the data from that message, and forward this message to Kinesis Firehose, right, on the upper side of the slide. So for the batch layer. So from Firehose, the data will go into S3, and then later on for historical analysis inside S3, Redshift, or AMR. Or you can actually take an immediate action, right? So you can, for example, call a Lambda function. That Lambda function can do something that will respond to that MQTT message. So overall, what we see in the marketplace is that the value of IoT data and the ability to capture vast amounts of data in these IoT devices is absolutely changing the field of advertising. So some of the examples that you'll see in a few minutes will hopefully kind of get this message across. And with that said, let me pass it along to Richard. So we'll have a...
or I'll take it first.
Yeah, we'll have a quick discussion about what we have here.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, Dimitri. Hi, everybody. Hi, Joel. So I'm Joel Evans. I'm one of the co-founders of Mobiquity. We're an AWS Premier Partner. We're also a top Alexa partner. So as you can see from our slide, really what we do is we work with customers all over the world. We're about 400 people or so globally. And we work with our customers on helping them understand how to use the latest technology. So we started in 2011 helping customers understand how to leverage mobility for their customers, either consumer-facing or enterprise. And these days, we focus really across the board and create a true digital engagement platform leveraging all the latest technology. As I mentioned, we're an AWS Premier Partner, so we absolutely love reInvent when hundreds of new services are suddenly announced that make our lives easier. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So as far as the way we address a problem, we work with our customers wherever they are in their digital cycle or in their engagement life cycle. So if they have a strategy and they're saying, hey, that new shiny object, how do I incorporate that into my business? Or overall, what does digital mean to my business? We work with them on the strategy, helping them put together a roadmap. Then we also have experienced design folks, so really folks that are focused 100% on a user experience. And then we have all the necessary people to do both the front end and back end development and integration, and then obviously the support and sustaining services. And then as Dimitri mentioned, measure, 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 right? So we've got analytics instrumented in every single thing we build. So some of our customers are, Panera Bread, Wawa, Weight Watchers, and even Amazon. So show of hands, who's been using the reInvent mobile app so far? Good experience? Let's all say yes, amazing experience. So we actually built that for Amazon. So they had a vision of what they wanted all of you to experience this year. It's the first time ever that they're able to have a completely customized, immersive experience. So feel free to come to me, or we actually have support people in Hall C that would be happy to hear what you think of the app and if you're having any problems. But we love it, it's exciting, it's everything we wanted it to be. So cheers to the team for making that happen. So I mentioned the different channels that we serve, and why am I here, right? So mobile, web, IoT, which Dimitri has already talked about, voice being Alexa, call center, Connect, et cetera, chatbots. And again, we look at that as an overall omni-channel experience, and we create effectively what is a digital engagement platform. So the interesting thing for us was, and really the basis for today's session that I'm like amazingly excited to show you, and it has to do with that basket over there and the guy sitting behind me, is really, the challenge was when you're working with somebody or you're tracking a customer, how do you know where they are? How can you track their location and deliver a contextualized advertising experience? So in the past, we've played with beacons at NRF. We even beaconized our booth at the show, where if you download our app beforehand and you told it what type of chocolate you like and what your favorite color is, as you approach the booth, it would announce your name. It would highlight a little, hue light bulb above the type of chocolate you like. Great, nice gimmicky. What are you really going to do in the real world with that? But that's an example of some of the stuff we were doing with beacons long before AWS IoT came about. And recently what's been happening is clients have been coming to us and saying, okay, I want to track my customer during their journey, during a retail journey. So if I'm shopping in a grocery store or I'm looking at apparel or different types of things, right? I come into the store, do they know anything about me? Do they know where I am? Do they know what I have on me? Like, what does that whole experience look like end to end? And what is that purchase journey really all about? So that led us to finding our friends at Flomio. And Richard's behind me, and I'll turn it over to him in a second. I won't steal his thunder, but they've been focused on what they call the proximity ID space for quite a long time. So while we were dabbling with it, trying to figure it all out, this has been their specialty. So we've combined together to put together a solution that we'll be demoing for you today. And if you're wondering why I continue to have a strange banana pen in my hand, the theme of this whole presentation, sort of underlying theme, is all around bananas, and you'll see why, and sort of a grocery store experience. And bananas means something special to Amazon, and so the first person to get that right when we get to Q&A gets a pen, and you continue. I've got a bunch of these to give away to some of the best questions, and I'll give it to Richard to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. Again, my name is Richard Grundy. I'm the founder and CEO of Flomio. And at Flomio, we're passionate about bringing RFID to consumer-facing applications. And so how did this all come about? I basically started the company after working in research and development at Motorola for well over a decade, specifically on government and enterprise-style applications around tracking. Things like, tracking a fireman in a burning building, that sort of thing. And we tried all different types of technologies, RFID, using inertial measurement units, which is just a fancy word for like an accelerometer, all the way to using like boot-mounted cameras that would track firefighters based on the patterns of the floor carpet tiles that they were walking on. So interesting ways of kind of like applying technology to solve this indoor location problem. Anyways, RFID, in my opinion, was great. It was a very mature ecosystem, right? So the depth and knowledge of folks in RFID, it's over several decades old. So there's an ecosystem of suppliers with true experience with how to deploy tracking solutions in the field, which when you compare it to the other technologies, tends to be sort of a make or break decision. So anyways, the problems with RFID were around the fact that it's really expensive still, and the fact that it's not mobile friendly. And those things are changing. And so basically, I launched Flomio by building the first RFID reader for the iPhone on Kickstarter. And that was back in 2012. Since then, we've gone through Techstars, which is a seed accelerator based out of Boulder, Colorado. We've raised some seed capital and sold our technology, our wares, to over 25 customers around 55 countries to date. And so our biggest customers are in the retail and hospitality segments or industries. Companies like Visa and Royal Caribbean use our technology to hit every touch point of the customer journey. And so really, what I think is interesting about the experience we've had is meeting companies like Mobiquity. Mobiquity has been a great partner in applying our know-how in places where it matters most, filing down the sharp edges of our tech to create a particularly practical solution. Anyways, both their understanding of the ad tech industry as well as their deep knowledge in AWS's services have been pivotal in really making the solution we're going to show for you today come together. So with that, I'll let Joel tell you a little bit about the problems that we're trying to solve.
Thank you, Richard. So how does all come together, right? So Dimitri sort of talked to you about the current state, walked you through a little bit AWS IoT. Richard started geeking out a little bit, but he'll geek out a lot more on what his technology is all about. And what are the problems that we were trying to solve that led us to create the solution we're going to be walking you through? So the first one I've talked a lot about is improving the customer journey, knowing where the person is at the point that they're doing their shopping, or even before they shop. What can result in an easy and secure customer checkout experience. If we do it right, well, we'll inevitably reduce lines, right? Everybody's always looking for a new line busting scenario. What does that actually look like, especially in a retail environment? And obviously this is an ad tech track, so I haven't hit on this enough, but I will be hitting on it a lot more from this point forward. How do we actually deliver targeted advertising? So now we should know where this person is. You heard Richard about some of the stuff they were doing, tracking firefighters where they are in a burning building. We should be able to track somebody in a store, right? And deliver the right targeted advertising to them at the right time. And then how do we continue to communicate with that customer as they grow? So with that, it's demo time.
All right, cross your fingers.
So cross your fingers.
So what we have here is the Smart Basket. And the way that it works is you would walk into a store and you would pair with it. And so I'm going to switch over so you can see what I'm seeing, which is that. So this is an iPhone, and it's running the smart card application that we've written. I'm going to skip the pairing process mainly because there's a lot of Bluetooth traffic here, so we're just going to jump right into the demo. So these boxes are outfitted with RFID labels, like this one. And basically, if I put these items in, let me just fit this in here. You should see them pop up. So here's another one. And then when you remove them, they disappear. So that's basically the demo. If you put them all in, they'll appear really quickly, so you can have them bagged. And that sort of really drives home to sort of like the fact that you can bag your items and then put them in there, or you can have a bagging solution there. So I'll just take you through how this sort of comes together in a store, right? So the first thing that's absolutely imperative.
Just gonna switch the.
Oh yeah, let me get back to the slides. Good call, thanks. First and foremost, everything in the store needs to be tagged. So this is an RFID label. It costs a few cents, and it measures roughly 15 millimeters by 70 millimeters. You can fit it inside of products, so they can be inside the packaging, so that they're not necessarily visible to the eye. But in fact, several retailers today are RFID tagging at the source, meaning like at the factory. And that they do that because it really gives them an accurate stock count of their overall inventory, right, across their supply chain, which tends to be really important for things like omni-channel commerce, which are becoming a trend. Retailers are realizing that a clear inventory visibility is a must for an efficient omni-channel experience. But also to enable companies like Mobiquity to create that experience, right? So it's really engaging so that when customers show up, every touch point along their journey, they're having something that's truly memorable. But either way, products can be easily tagged in the store with traditional label applicators. So even if you don't have tagging at the source, there's all sorts of tools that we provide that allow for you to create the tags and tag them, in the back of your particular retail store. So that's a way that we address that. Step one in the experience for the customer is they show up with their phone, they tap it on one of these baskets to pair. Once they've paired with it, their shopping session begins. The second step is simply to go around the store and grab items, put them inside of it, and then these items will get tallied up, listed. And if items are removed, they disappear, very much like you'd expect. So these events, along with the customer's location, are what are funneled through the AWS IoT backend. And that's sort of the things that we're really excited about showing you later on here. Step 3, as you can see, the connected cart will now add up your total, and the customer has the ability to pay, and they can do it just like they would pay, for something like, ride sharing with Uber or Lyft, right? They can have a card in their mobile wallet, right? Like an Apple Wallet or Android Pay, or they can have a card on file, and it's just sort of taken care of for them. So that seamless, get out and go experience is definitely covered. And finally, once payment is accepted, the products are now taken out of inventory and marked as purchased. So that way, these loss prevention portals that you typically find in retailers that do use RFID don't sound the alarm because you've bought these things, right? So you'd be walking out with them, but they wouldn't necessarily trigger the alarm. So that's kind of like how it would fall into place in a store. And so what we'll do now is we'll kind of go through the process or the approach by which we architected this on Amazon, right? So the first part, like I mentioned in the last slide, is tagging everything, right? So we've actually worked with Avery Dennison, which is the largest label supplier around the country, if not the world, to build the most flexible system that we could come up with to quickly retrofit a store. So this is not a store that's been tagging items at the factory. This is a store that basically has a bunch of SKUs, and they're like, hey, you have to tag it all. So we have these tools that allows for us to create these tags really quickly, and they add them directly into the inventory backend. If you do have a SKU database where you do have your inventory already, there's basically points of integration that we can do there. But basically, the system creates the SKUs, it prints the tags, and it we're able to put them on the products on the fly, right, with label attachers and things like that. As products are created, the metadata is pushed to AWS. We use API Gateway to expose a standard REST interface and a Lambda function to route that into DynamoDB for like textual data, and we use S3 for all of like, the image and any type of video, heavy data. And we do that because we want to help with lazy loading and allow for the responsiveness of the system not to be snagged up. So here is actually the most interesting piece of this system, which is the edge devices, right? This is where the magic happens. Starting at the bottom, we have the smart cart itself, or the smart basket, and these comes in different flavors. We have baskets, bags, carts. We even have a stationary podium so that you can just carry everything in plastic bags and then you just dip them in the podium. Like I showed you in the demo, it basically is able to detect everything in fractions of a second. So each of these components, can be retrofitted to basically put into any system that you'd want. We've even done a mini fridge, for instance. So really, really, flexible technology to use. But at the core is a Raspberry Pi running the Flowmeo daemon. So we have a background process that is basically managing, connecting over Bluetooth and capturing all of the data that's being pushed, from each one of these tags as they're being detected. Now this is not only for configuration, it's just for the default, right? So we use Bluetooth, for instance, Bluetooth Low Energy for being able to connect to the mobile phone from the customer. We use Wi-Fi to be able to move data that's being detected by the basket or the cart up to AWS for this suggestion algorithm that we're going to be talking about. And so, whether you have Wi-Fi in your store whether you're outside of mobile cell phone coverage, these things can influence which way we approach the problem. So we use basically Bluetooth and Wi-Fi in combination and switch back and forth depending on the environment where we're in. Like if you're in a store where basically there's no cell phone coverage because it's out in the boonies, like then we'd use the store Wi-Fi and then we'd ultimately tether through that. The mobile app would get onto the Wi-Fi in order to create the experience. The key is that we have all of these tools in our toolbox to be able to create the experience and make it very robust. So the cart sends these scan results to the mobile phone every 200 milliseconds or 5 times a second. The mobile phone keeps a running list of the items in the cart, and the loss prevention portal, which is at the top, is what would ultimately detect tags that are exiting and checks ultimately whether they've been purchased or not. The area in gray is sectioned off specifically because it's using Greengrass, and Greengrass allows us to run the system offline should the tether to the cloud be severed, right? And so this ability of being able to sync on the fly, getting in and out of connectivity is something that Greengrass offers, from AWS, which is super powerful, especially for a solution like this. If anything happens, from a big data standpoint, while being severed from the connection to the back end, Greengrass is able to sort of grab all that into a local cache, and it deals with syncing and making sure that all that big data will feed these algorithms for suggestion that we'll get to in a second here. So that's kind of how everything at the edge works. So we'll jump right into the next, which is connecting it to AWS's back end, and we're using AWS IoT to do that. So whether it's implicitly or explicitly, right, whether it's using Greengrass or whether it's connecting through AWS IoT directly to the cloud because there's connectivity, the key is that Smart Cart, Smart Basket pushes activity through to AWS ultimately. And this uses the real-time MQTT protocol that Dimitri was talking about, in a publish-subscribe sort of model. And the published topics, as they're listed here, are cart location and cart contents. So we keep that sort of constantly publishing, and they reflect the activity of the cart at all times. The IoT rules that we have, which are the 3 in the middle of the slide towards the bottom, those they filter out for particular conditions of interest, right? These events that we're trying to trigger on. So did the cart enter a key area of the store, right? Has an item of interest been added, and what does that mean, right? Or actually, the what does that mean will come later. Has an item been removed, right? And so these are the sort of data points that we're sort of feeding into our suggestion engine that will make this really come together. So the IoT rules are great at segmenting MQTT streams so that we're able to sort of react to the ones that make most sense. So this is what one of the rules looks like. And the main thing here is that the contents of the cart, once it's changed, it ultimately influences a search for that particular product. So each one of these tags doesn't really have any metadata on it, right? All it has is just an electronic product code. It's called an EPC, which is unique to every single item. So rather than a SKU, which is unique to a class of items, so Cocoa Krispies would have a SKU, but every single Cocoa Krispies box would have a different EPC. So every time an EPC gets pushed, we have to do a search for what the product metadata, like what's the name of the product, Cocoa Krispies in this case, what's the price, things like that, what's the nutritional information that might be interesting to a particular customer. So it's querying DynamoDB to get that information right when the IoT rule fires. So that's sort of a use of the IoT rules. And here, we tie it into a simple campaign, and we call this simple campaign, and we'll get to that in the next slide. But all it's doing is just sort of like an if this then that sort of thing, right? If I see Cocoa Krispies, or rather, if I see Frosted Flakes, I'm going to recommend a banana, right? So that's the suggestion. So a simple campaign can simply be, if I see Frosted Flakes, I'm gonna recommend bananas, right? And so we funnel that through using SNS, right? So we use simple notification service to get that back to the customer's phone. And that's the simplest way. If you put in peanut butter, suggest some jelly. If you put marshmallows, suggest chocolate and graham crackers. The suggestions, again, through SNS are instantaneous, and that's important because we need this to be contextually relevant. If I'm doing this like right here in the middle of this aisle, right, it's important, like while I'm shopping, to give that suggestion. I can't have that happen 7 seconds later. Part of the reason why we're using AWS IoT, which is based on MQTT, which is incredibly quick, right, and responsive, while it's connected to the cloud, is a key requirement to the solution for it to work. So this is what a Lambda function looks like, and here, in this case, we're doing a comparison of the items that are captured to see which matches yogurt, right? So if yogurt has been matched, we're just simply going to publish, to a particular SNS topic, which has been registered with the installation of this app on this customer's phone. Hey, Dole bananas are on sale today. They're $1.05 a pound, so you should get some. So that's how Lambda really sort of helps us out for this simple campaign. And next, we're going to let Joel tell you how that really matters in the broader sense.
Instead of just the deep dive,
yeah, just
technical, like how it all comes together. So this is sort of, the most amazing thing for me about presentations like this is you saw Richard, and I got everybody to applaud, but I know you were feeling the moment of applauding, is when it all comes together, right? I mean, you just saw this super deep dive of how it all came together just for that quick little experience, the whatever it was, milliseconds of time, where it's scanning, it knows what's going on, and now you know what just went in that basket, and all the other things can happen. And as I said, the really cool part for me is we basically created a brand new ad unit. So when you think about it, we know what someone's putting in their basket at the time they're putting it in and where they are in the store at the time that they're putting it in. So when you think about it, we can now do personalized targeting at the time of item detection. And as I said, where the cart is in relation to it, what items placed in the cart. And then using Flomio's SDK, we can actually integrate into an existing mobile app, or we can create a brand new mobile app that then allows you to deliver either a generic promotion or even a targeted promotion doing an upsell opportunity. So really some pretty incredible stuff, and I'll take you through that a little bit more. You can see a little bit of the end result there, but the idea there is, I've put in something and now I'm getting a recommendation to buy something else, and it knows exactly where it is, and Richard was telling you sort of the if this then that moments. You as a retailer can decide, what do you want to promote, either using a very simple campaign or using a more complex campaign by tying it to different systems. Did you want to take me through a little bit more of this?
Yeah, let me just connect the dots here. So basically, this new gray area that's in the middle of the architecture is capturing sort of the store ad infrastructure, right? So what we're doing is rather than feeding the stream of MQTT messages into our simple campaign, which is just a Lambda function, right? That's just doing a bunch of if this, then that statements. We feed it into like a Kinesis fire hose, right? And so then Kinesis really stands out because it's able to sort of capture those streams and chunk them up so that we can actually do some analysis on them, right? And so that allows for not only the merchant themselves in store to be able to apply some algorithmic approach to how they want to suggest, but it also allows for an exchange, right? For an ad network to plug in and to be able to sort of sponsor a particular ad, right? So very much like on Amazon where you would search for an item and you'd get those sponsored results at the top. That's the sort of thing that we can now do using an IoT device in a brick and mortar store. So again, it all sort of is tied together by the fact that whether it's Greengrass or whether it's AWS IoT or whether it's Firehose is giving you sort of like this really, really responsive centralized place where you're going to be able to carry out these types of computations, right, and generate a suggestion that makes sense. I think that Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I want to make sure that I didn't miss out anything. But yeah, programmatic advertising, all those sorts of things would all tie into this particular integration point, and honestly, it can grow from there. So I'll let Joel take it back, I think. Next one. Oh, no, actually. Yeah, this one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot one more. Sorry. All right, so the last part is the loss prevention and the fact that the cart location, or rather the cart itself, needs to purchase the items. So what I just added here is towards the middle, and basically purchase status is changed once an item is purchased, and so it goes and updates the purchase database to say this particular EPC is now been purchased or bought, and so we use a rule and a Lambda function to do that. And the loss prevention portal also uses, some sort of microcontroller-based device that's able to detect what EPCs are going through the portals, check to see if they've been purchased or not. If they haven't, sound the alarm. Again, all has to happen within fractions of a second. Otherwise, people are going to be running off before anyone's going to chase them. So, yeah, AWS IoT really comes together, all with MQTT, and I'll let Joel tell you the exciting part.
Well, first, it's just this easy, right? It's not that hard. How many services? There's hardly any services here. No, but in all seriousness, it's pretty amazing how you now know where it is, what was purchased. You can hook into your existing store system, so you can actually now tie together with other information you may have. You can deliver incredibly targeted promotions through a whole new, ad unit effectively, and work in a disconnected or a connected state, do loss prevention. The list goes on. And it's pretty amazing that all that came from, okay, the challenge is how do I deliver more targeted advertising to a customer as they're walking around the store? And instead of using beacons, we're obviously now light years ahead and using every AWS service you can possibly imagine. So as I talked about before, my favorite part is we've got all that stuff behind the scenes, but the end result here is I've added something to my cart. Pay no attention to what's in my cart. Someone got a little creative with what was in my cart already. But in theory here, I add some yogurt to my cart. At the time that I add my yogurt, it pops up an ad to go get some bananas in aisle 3, which are on sale and being promoted at that moment. And you can see even on the left, you've got a little bit of a highlight. No, I'm getting a no shake. Yeah. Oh, all right. Had a little surprise for you, but I'm getting a no shake. But you can see where the green is highlighted, sort of showing you where the bananas are in the store. And that's effectively it, which we love. It's awesome. And you don't want to try? I was going to go for my one more thing moment. Richard was showing me. We actually had it working. We're going to do a cool live demo. I think he's got a little too much. Oh, it's failing. A little too much interference. But I think some of the really cool things. I think I've been wrapping them up as we go along here. But we're using Greengrass. We're using API Gateway, so we can deal with disconnected states effortlessly. The power of AWS, we've got a lot of local cache going. And now, really, the big thing is, we're using AWS IoT in a really new and creative way. So we're not tracking whether or not a door opened or closed. We're not looking at the performance of a motor and making sure it's not overheating. We're actually tracking the experience of a user as they're going around all these different points of a grocery store or apparel or whatever the case may be. And I mentioned bananas before. We haven't hit on them as much as I expected us to. But I do have banana pens to give out. We also are doing a little bit of a dev session where Richard will be happy to give you an in-person demo of how all the magic is actually all coming together. And that's at the Dev Talk. Do you know where that Dev Talk is?
It is at the Expo.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we'll provide the information
the
on
Maker
that.
Lounge.
It's at the Maker Lounge?
At the Maker Lounge throughout the week. The Dev Talk's, I believe, Wednesday, but throughout the week at the Maker Lounge, we'll have the baskets on show. You could come and play with them, download our app, run it on your own device. And ask us a lot of questions.
All right, so with that, we're happy to take some questions.